And one of the toughest schedules, we're talking about them dogs. Georgia is looking to win their third national title in 4 years after finishing fourth last season in the AP poll, with the only loss coming to Alabama and the SEC championship game, which of course ended their shot at a three-peat. On offense, two-time Mackey Award winner Brock Bowers is off to the NFL, but quarterback Carson Beck and offensive coordinator Mike Bobo are back. Beck ranked third in the FBS in passing yards last season. And on defense, 3 of the top 5 tacklers returned from last year, as well as the top 2 sack getters in Jalen Walker and Michael Williams. Georgia has led the nation in scoring defense over the past 3 seasons. Here's Kirby Smart today on if the team has a chip on their shoulder after how last year ended.
We don't have a chip on our shoulder in terms of people trying to use that as motivation. I've never used a failure from the previous year as motivation, and I've never used the success of a previous year as motivation. We won't do that this year. That's not who we are. Initially, I was wondering how I got that draw, but we're not one to complain. We're one to be excited. I think when you step into the shoes of a University of Georgia football player, you accept that that challenge is going to be there. As coaches, you want to play the best. And people forget that when you spent time in the NFL, every week was like that. So when Texas and Oklahoma came into the conference, every schedule was going to get harder. It wasn't going to get easier, it was going to get harder. And we embrace that. We look forward to it and excited for the challenge to go to some really tough places.
Embrace it indeed. Now, Georgia won 2 in a row, but failed the three-peat last year when, of course, Bama dethroned them. Now, Coach Kirby described his team's schedule earlier as a gauntlet. Of course, they have one of the toughest schedules coming up with 3 road games against Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Now, Jordan, how do you prepare for this type of schedule?
Well, one game at a time. Nothing changes for Georgia, right? Kirby Smart was indoctrinated under the master of one game at a time, the GOAT, Nick Saban, who lives it on a daily basis. So nothing changes for them, and I think it helps that Clemson's first. It's hard to look past at Clemson. If you had a non-conference game to start the season, well, you might look past it a little bit, but that's not the case for this Georgia football team. And the other thing, when this schedule was released, 15 other teams in the SEC went, do we have to play Georgia? They hurried to look at the schedule. Do we have to play Georgia? Georgia didn't hurry to look to see if they had to play anybody. Everyone has to play Georgia, and that's just the state of the SEC right now.
They actually have the 3rd toughest schedule in the FBS. Now, Greg, that is according to ESPN Analytics. Now, Greg, what's the biggest difference this year for Georgia?
Well, I think really the last couple of years, the biggest change is the schedule. I mean, in the SEC East and the divisions, the SEC East, in most cases, and at least in the last decade, a little bit more manageable than the SEC West, where it was kind of a gauntlet with what LSU had done and Bama had done, and A&M's had some great years, Auburn's had some great years. So you look, and then Ole Miss as well, or not forgetting about them. Looking at the schedule, though, now, to have to play 3 teams that are ranked in the top 10 in the preseason at those 3 places, at Bama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, very, very difficult. I also think, too, when you look at the best versions of Georgia, and when you're this good, you're the alpha dog program in the sport, according to many, you're going to be measured against yourself. So you could say, well, hey, look, the defensive line, for instance, maybe it's just not quite as good as it's been in 2021 and 2022 when they won the national championship. Doesn't mean it's not maybe one of the best in the country. It's just maybe not where it's once was. So I think that's kind of the problem, is they're kind of chasing ghosts a little bit because of how good those teams were in both 2021 and 22.
And a lot of folks, of course, are worried about playing Georgia. And Georgia has only lost 2 games in the last 3 years, and Carson Beck is coming off a season in which he set Georgia's single-season record for completion percentage, and he spoke earlier today on the road to get to this point in his career.
Those first 3 years were really tough, especially, getting a little scrap time, getting playing time, but it wasn't real playing time. But obviously I knew that one day I was going to get that opportunity, and I think that's what helped me stay and, helped me to continue to compete and try to get better each and every day and just keep progressing, because I knew when I got that opportunity, I just wanted to be ready. So once I did, come out, finally get there, and I'm super excited.
He is a great example of college football. The day and age when you go somewhere and you jump school to school, it's a popular trend. This kid stuck it out. He stuck it out now, and he didn't get the starting job in a tough moment when the starter went down, and he lost the starting job to Stetson Bennett the week of UAB game 2 years ago, and then said, you know what? I'm sticking with it. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to show resiliency, which is one of our core traits, and he did that.
He stuck it out, and Carson Beck is back for year 2 in Georgia. And there's a lot of hype around this QB. He's considered not only to be the first overall pick, but also one of the favorites to win the Heisman. So let's talk year 2. Jordan, with all the hype, how does someone like Carson Beck manage the pressure, both on an individual level, but also overall with leading his team?
Yeah, I think you show up to SEC Media Days in a mock turtleneck and a chain. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. Now he's one of the best dressed. I've been trying to get Greg to rock one of those forever.
It's a tough sell.
I've
worn a mock turtleneck before, but it was because I had nothing else. Yeah, it was a long time ago, yeah.
All right, in all seriousness, there is a lot of pressure around this program just because the standard of excellence is that they go undefeated. That's kind of the standard for Georgia right now. Carson Beck in particular, he just needs to continue to not try to do too much, right? A lot of quarterbacks will jump off the tape because they're incredibly fast, athletic, or this huge arm. And yes, he has all the physical tools, but what jumps out when you watch him is how efficient he is, how quickly the ball comes out of his hands, how accurate he is. So continue to not force throws, continue to play the quarterback position in a calm manner, and I think he's going to continue to have success. But one thing that Kirby said today about leadership as a whole, he said this spring they're really pushing him to celebrate more with his teammates, be more excited, because naturally he's kind of like a status quo, no emotion kind of guy, and they want him to get more involved so he takes a little bit more of that leadership role.
I think guys will gravitate towards that too. I mean, it's just he has so much game, but the charisma now I think is the next part of the evolution and making sure guys gravitate towards him.
Well, that's that turtleneck.
It's
Check
also,
that box.
It's fair. It's also hard to do that though when you haven't played. 100%. But now that he's played and he's accomplished, like he can really be comfortable in his own skin and have a lot of fun because he's proven that he can play as well as anybody in the sport at that position. And I look last year too, really the first 2-3 games kind of held him back a little bit. Like, hey man, we don't want to put you in an uncomfortable spot. And then the Kentucky game rolled around and they said, all right, it's time to unleash you on the college football world. And from that point forward, he was really lights out. So I think the sky's the limit for this young man. He's got great ball placement, really, really cerebral, and has a great feel for what they want to be offensively.
We'll see that emotion as well. Now, Carson Beck will, of course, be without his go-to target, tight end Brock Bowers, who was selected in this year's draft, 13 overall by the Raiders. He was essential in Georgia's success and was not only the first Bulldog to win a John Mackey Award for college football's best tight end, but the first player to win twice overall. Now, there is no doubt that Brock Bowers was such a key point to Georgia's offense. Now, Jordan, what can we expect the offense to look like this year without him?
Well, I think it's going to look similar in some elements, but if you take a player like Brock Bowers off the field, something's going to change. He was such a chess piece for Mike Bobo in this offense, really his entire career, but they could use him all over the field. Split him out wide. He can take a DB on one-on-one. He was such an incredible blocker in the box as well as out on the perimeter. He can run by guys, great route runner, great hands, and even better after the catch. So that chess piece is not going to come, I don't think, from the tight end position as much. Although Oscar Delp is a really good player, I look at a guy like maybe a Dylan Bell, who's a running back / wide receiver kind of guy that they can use in the backfield. They can split him out wide and give themselves that diversity of personnel groups that they had with Brock Bowers.
Well, the funny thing is we look at the Heisman Trophy, and we know it's probably going to go to a quarterback, just being frank. But I also look to is I don't think this offense is going to completely center around Carson Beck and the passing attack. I think with the addition of Trevor Etienne and Branson Robinson getting healthy again, I think the run game is going to be a bigger part of what this offense is going to be. And I think Kirby Smart's been pretty outspoken about, hey, we got to create more explosive plays. And by creating explosive plays, he means, hey, we got to gain 30, 40, 50 yards on one snap as opposed to methodically working our way down the field. Well, you know how they do that? You make the defense think that you're going to run the football, you play action pass, you throw it over their head. So I think the run game is going to be what's really different about this offense, partly because they're going to be healthier at running back, and they've made some notable additions like ETN, like we referenced.
And Georgia, of course, has reached the SEC championship game 6 times in the last 7 seasons. 28 seasons in the Big 12. Oklahoma joins the SEC with a schedule that includes visits from Tennessee, Alabama, and trips to Ole Miss, Missouri, and LSU. Oh, and the annual Red River rivalry game versus Texas just means more now that it counts in the SEC standings. Seth Luttrell takes over as offensive coordinator, and priority number one will be filling the nearly 7,000-yard void left by all Big 12 quarterback Dillon Gabriel, who transferred to Oregon. Now, Oklahoma's defense made life easy for the offense last season. OU forced 26 turnovers that led to 111 points. Armed with 79% of its defensive production returning, the Sooners are poised to take another step forward in Brent Venables' third season. Here's Brent earlier today.
Jackson understands, better than anybody what goes into being a quarterback of a football team, of a locker room, the leader, the face, the responsibilities, the challenges, his skill, his arm talent, his toughness, his instincts, his ability to lead people, bring out the best in people, no question about it. He's ready for his opportunity and his moment. We're excited for the challenge as competitors, as a football program. Oklahoma, isn't intimidated as a football program. We're running towards the SEC. I think that goes without saying. We've looked forward for the last several years for this partnership to be a part of an amazing conference, the best conference in college football.
Now, with Oklahoma making its SEC debut this season, they have not been given an easy first year. They'll be facing 6 of the best teams in the nation: Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee, and Missouri. Greg, what do you think overall will be their biggest challenge in this conference?
Well, they're going to have the same challenges that Texas will as they transition to a league in which every single team can get you. And I think that's been the biggest adjustment. And if you look at really the SEC over the course of time, it doesn't matter the week. Even Vanderbilt, with all due respect to my good buddy right here, even Vanderbilt, depending on the week,
while we're down,
can go and rally up and get you if you don't play your best. Now, they've been down, no denying that, but if you look at some of these road trips at Auburn, really difficult place to play. We all know that Ole Miss is the legitimate playoff contender. Missouri's a playoff contender this year. You got Bama coming to you before you go to LSU, who I think is also a legitimate playoff contender. So I think the gauntlet and being able to weather the storm will be the biggest adjustment for Oklahoma, because there is not that get back on track team in the SEC the same way they might have seen it from time to time in the Big 12.
And in order to weather that storm and the physicality week to week, the line of scrimmage is huge, right?
Yeah.
And up front, they lose all their full-time starters from last year at offensive line, got a young, talented quarterback. So I think that's going to take a little bit to come along, to gel as a unit as well. But look, this is a team that, albeit they have a brutal schedule, and Texas is getting all the hype because they come in as more of the favorite new team. They make a run for a championship. Oklahoma's a really talented football team. Jackson Arnold is so good, and he's young, and he'll make mistakes. But especially on that defensive side of the ball, Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman coming back. They have a bunch of guys coming back. That defense is going to carry them to some wins that I think maybe if we looked at the schedule today, we're like, I don't know if they'll get that one. They'll get 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah, for sure. And Jackson Arnold, he is set to steer the Sooners through one of their most important years in program history, making a statement in the SEC and facing 6 of the top teams in the nation. Now, after sitting for a year behind now Oregon QB Dillon Gabriel, the former 5-star quarterback is one of the most anticipated newcomers in the country at one of the most prestigious positions in the country. He spoke with our Dare Noka.
I mean, it's blessings to God. I wouldn't be in this position without him and without my family too. I would, if you told me this 18 months ago that I'd be here right now, I honestly wouldn't believe you. It's a great feeling. I'm just super blessed.
SEC fans are going to be learning more about Oklahoma every day throughout the season. How do you describe the offense you'll run to those fans?
A super up-tempo, fast offense. Spread them out wide, run a spread offense. Old air raid system's part of it. But it's a super explosive offense that loves to just get going, have fun.
You had limited experience a year ago. I know you started the bowl game against Arizona. In that limited experience, what was the biggest thing you learned about playing quarterback, starting at quarterback at a high college football level?
I think just limiting the mistakes that you make. I don't have to, in high school, you can kind of get away with things that you can't get away with college. You can make these extreme plays that where in college you don't need to make. Just go out, execute, do what the coaches need you to do, and you can go out and you'll win games, man. And I feel like in the bowl game and even in BYU a little bit, like I try to do too much, try to overcompensate, and that's when the mistakes start happening, the turnovers start happening. So just learn to kind of play in my realm and just kind of, execute and do what I'm coached is a huge learning point for me.
I know you got some receivers coming back, 3 that got to play quite a bit. Tell us about Deion Burks' transfer from Purdue.
Deion's an absolute stud, great person, great football player, super fast, super quick. He's going to be one of our guys this year, man. He's always going to get open. I mean, in spring ball, he's always getting open. Super fast guy, super twitched up. I'm super excited for him.
Jackson Arnold, starting quarterback, Oklahoma Sooners. Welcome to the league.
Thank you.
18 months from graduating high school to starting QB for Oklahoma. Greg, what are the realistic expectations with Jackson Arnold?
I think he can certainly elevate to the top 5 in the SEC if the opportunity presents itself. Look, a lot of it has to do with playing within himself. He's got the natural ability like Jordan referenced. We all know that he was highly recruited, blue chip prospect coming out of high school. But a lot of it has to do with your supporting cast. And the good news is he's got guys that he can rely on. He just has to distribute the football, stay within the offense. Seth Luttrell is going to do a great job of making him feel really comfortable in both the downfield passing attack and the regular down and distance passing attack as well. So I'm really optimistic about what this young man might be. The only thing that he's got to do, Jordan, I think, is just make sure he doesn't try to win the game on one play like so many young quarterbacks do.
Did that a few times in the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan, how confident are you in his ability to lead the Sooners and their offense to the top of the SEC?
Well, I think he can. And what I love about SEC Media Days is it's talking season for us to sit up here with microphones. But for most of the players and coaches, they don't give you a ton, right? But if you saw that interview with Dari Noka and Jackson Arnold, he asked him about Deion Burks. Did you see the smile and the glance to the camera when he talked about his stud receiver that transferred him from Purdue? So I think he loves him. I think he loves the talent that's around him. And like he admitted, he's just trying to do too much as a young, talented quarterback at times. He's going to learn, and he is going to be one of the top guys in the SEC sooner rather than later because the talent, skill set, and what Seth Luttrell is going to set him up to do from an offensive perspective.
Absolutely, and having that composure is everything. And I loved what Coach Brett Venables said, that Jackson is a guy that knows that the tough moments are part of that position. As in any position, to get better, that's one of the ingredients. We're going to take Coach Josh Heupel arriving to SEC Media, and he had this to say about the hype regarding his QB.
The thing that I've loved about Nico is, when he came into the building, he wanted to earn the respect of his teammates. And you do that through your actions, not your words. Everybody understands how hard he works to become the best that he can at his craft. He takes great ownership in his skill set and developing it, understanding of our offense. And as a young player, gets his first start in the bowl game. One of the best compliments you can give to a quarterback is when it goes from the practice field to the game field, it slows down for him. During the course of the bowl game, it slowed down for him. Thought he was in great command out there. Now, there's a lot of things that he learned from that game. He's had great urgency in his preparation all offseason. I'm really excited to see his growth and development as a young quarterback throughout the course of this 24-hour journey.
We're excited for that journey as well. Now, in regards to Nico, Greg, are we buying into the hype?
We are, and a lot of it has to do with ceiling with Nico Iamaleava, because so much of what we saw in the bowl game were parts and aspects of his skill set that I didn't really anticipate, to be honest with you. I knew he had a big arm. I knew he could place the football. Those two things were obvious from his prep school tape. What I didn't know is that at 6'5" and change, he has some quick twitch mobility. And we saw that with runs between the tackles. We saw that with runs to the perimeter. And if he can just keep you off balance with his skill set, not just throwing it, because he's going to hit guys that are open, because in this offense, guys are going to be open. That was the problem last year. They had way too many long foul balls, and guys were open, and Joe Milton just couldn't connect with those guys that were open. So I know he's going to hit those, but to keep them off balance too with his legs, what we saw against Iowa is going to be a real problem for just about everybody he'll see in the SEC.
I think he played a near perfect game against Iowa, and I agree the mobility, I think, is the game changer for me. Look, I'm not buying into the hype, right? I ranked my top 8 quarterbacks in the SEC yesterday, and Vol Twitter lit me up because I didn't have him in my top 8. It's less of an indictment on him and what I think of Nico, and more of a testament. I think this quarterback class is just so deep this year. Look, I think Nico can absolutely play his way into a top 5 in the SEC. I just wasn't ready after a bowl game, one body of work, albeit it was really good to say that he's better than a Garrett Nussmeier, who went on a biggest stage in the SEC championship and threw for 295 yards in a loss against Georgia and then lit up Wisconsin, in the bowl game as well. Just a little more body of work from some of those guys. But, man, Nico has all the skill set to light the world on fire in this offense under Josh Heupel. I expect him to do so. I want a couple games, and we'll get there.
Heaven forbid.
We
see him play a couple games, right?
He's going to be good. He's going to be great.
We've fallen victim in the past to kind of jumping on the hype train. Let's be real. I can rewind a year ago to a guy that we were all very enamored with the skill set that Joe Milton showed us in the bowl game against Clemson, and we just have to be a little bit more guarded. But
totally.
I'd much rather have promise and projections than to be a guy that's like maximized out already.
No doubt.
Really optimistic about Nico Iamaleava, and I think rightfully so. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of us really genuinely believe that Tennessee is a legitimate playoff contender, I think.
100%. I really liked what Coach Heupel said about how Nico is determined to earn that all-around respect and also in the locker room, and you do that through actions, not words. So hopefully he makes your list next time, Jordan. Now we're going to shift gears over to Missouri, who won 11 games last season, its fourth 11-win season in school history. Now the Tigers capped the year off with a win over Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl Classic. It was Missouri's most wins in a season since 2014. Now, Missouri returns one of the nation's top quarterback wide receiver duos from a year ago in senior quarterback Brady Cook and junior wideout Luther Burden III. Now, this tandem connected for 1,197 yards a year ago, the most among FBS QB receiver tandems. Now, Missouri enters the season with high expectations. According to ESPN Bet, the Tigers have a 14-1 odds to win the SEC. Now, with no Georgia or Texas on the schedule, Missouri has the easiest schedule among SEC teams. Now, having one of the easiest schedules this season, Greg, do you see that as a benefit or a burden?
With all due respect, there is not an easy schedule in the SEC. There's not, and we need to, in the new era of college football, get really comfortable with seeing teams that are 10-2 that we're not used to seeing that are 10-2. There's a reason why when you look at the win totals for all these teams, Ohio State, Georgia, 1, 2, whatever, however you have them, they're all at like 10.5.
Yeah.
Because I think natural human tendency is you're going to lose games maybe you shouldn't if you're already secured a playoff spot. So I think it's a challenge, though, going to A&M. I think it's a challenge going to Alabama. And then following that trip to Alabama, you have the bye week, come back, kind of regroup, and then you have to play against an Oklahoma team that I think matches up pretty well against Missouri. A couple of road trips in November, finally finish up with Arkansas. So I know it's more manageable than most, but I certainly wouldn't qualify the Missouri Tiger schedule as being easy.
Jordan, benefit or burden? It's easy, but what about you, Jordan?
I'm going to say it's a little bit of a burden, and here's why. Hang in with me. I agree with everything Greg just said. Their road is smoother than a lot of other schools with a bumpy road and a tough SEC schedule. But here's the thing. Last year, we all sat in this very room, actually in a different city, but we sat at SEC Media Days, and nobody picked Missouri to be good. They got to go in with nothing to lose and everything to gain. They were an underdog almost every opportunity, and they showed everybody who they were. This year, nobody's going to be sleeping on them. Right? So they're expected, I think, favored to win, 9 or 10 games maybe? Mm-hmm. Something crazy like that. So they're going to have to not slip up. They're going to have to, the margin for error for Missouri in their run to the playoffs is very thin because of the expectations. You lose your defensive coordinator, you lose 3 draft picks in the secondary, still got Brady Cook, still got Luther Burden, but I just think there may be 1 or 2 slip-ups there because of the expectations are so different last year to this year.
And Missouri has its highest regular season win total in at least the last 15 seasons. Now, speaking of burden, someone who is contributing to the benefit is Luther Burden III, who returns to continue to dominate. Now, Jordan, is he the best player in college football?
He's up there. He's on the short list. He's probably in the top 3. And what I love is how Kirby Moore and Eli Drinkwitz, the 2 masterminds behind this offense, find every way possible to get this dude the ball. It is unbelievable. You flip on the tape, he is moving pre-snap every stinking play. They're moving him from one side to the other, motioning him, stacking him. They're finding so many creative ways to get this guy the ball because everybody on the defensive side goes, I know where you're going. We know who you're trying to throw it to. We're going to try to stop it. And Missouri just goes, okay, well, here we're going to move him over there. We're going to move him over here. And Brady does a great job of looking defenses off, finding the ball or getting him the ball as much as possible. So he's up there. He's an absolute stud. He's going to be great this year, and he's going to be great at the next level, too.
Can't wait to see.
Give me something.